When I had this tractor running, I smelled rubber burning. When I engaged the blades, it was smoking. When I shut the engine off, I couldn't spin this spindle. It's spinning okay now. And you can hear this one here. It has a little bit of noise to it. But this is the one that it just wouldn't spin. So this is due for a cleaning. I'll get this grass off here. I'll flip it over. I'm going to sharpen the blades if they need it and balance them. I'm going to pull this off and see if I can get to the bearings on here without too much difficulty. I'm not sure what this is. This might be some kind of a brake, and maybe this just locked in. I'm not sure. It might not be the spindle itself. It might be this brake. I haven't seen this before. This is a Yardsman track that's made by MTD. I had a old Montgomery Ward that had a similar deck, a little different configuration, had a third wheel for the belt, but the blades seemed to be the blades were the same, and the mounting, which is a real pain to get these on and off, are the same. But it didn't have this on it. The braking was different. It was the typical brake where it would just come against the belt and it would stop it over here. So I'm guessing this is a brake, and this may be what the problem is. Maybe it was down. There is a piece under the tractor that when you pull the deck up, it goes on that, but this doesn't seem to have much play in it. So I'm going to take this apart and see if that's what the issue is. I notice this one here is cleaner, and this one over here has more rust on it. Neither one has a covering, so that's not the issue. Anyway, once I find out a little bit more about it, I'll be back. Okay, I'm finally able to work into the garage. This is a change. I'm usually doing this out on the lawn. Anyway, back to this spindle. It was spinning freely when I had it off the tractor. Now to get this off, this is a 15/16 nut. If you don't have an impact driver, this is just a Harbor Freight. I had this for years. It works great. And you have to get this off. You're going to need a breaker bar on this, and you're going to have to wedge the blades underneath. But when this comes off, like I mentioned before, I haven't seen this plate on other MTD decks, and I believe this is a brake because this notch gets into this hole. And the only reason I can figure for this, there's a lever that's connected to the tractor. When you raise the deck up, it presses down on this, and I believe that's what the brake is. Now this was smoking. It looked like it was on fire. But when I looked underneath to see where the smoke was coming from, I thought it was a belt because you had that rubbery smell. That lever that presses on here was nowhere near it. So I can't figure out why this was smoking. It could have been that this one was frozen maybe, but it spins right now. It's on these barrels. That's why the blades aren't spinning. But while I have this off, I'm going to put this nut back on. I'm going to pop this through. While I have this apart, I'm going to clean off the top of this bearing. I'm going to pick this seal off and see what it looks like. If it's rust in there, if it needs grease. If this one needs grease, I don't have a bearing to replace any of these right now. But while I have it apart, if it looks like it's low on grease, I'm disassembling the whole piece. This should come right out with a couple. Putting this nut back on, not to mess up these threads. This should pop right through, and there's a bearing like this on the bottom. I'll take care of the bearings, put them back together. The blades do need a little sharpening. There are a few nicks in them, and I'll take care of that. But again, I still can't figure out why it was smoking. I'm going to have to look under the tractor. Has to be something under there. Nothing was wedged in other than that dirty grass was all around. So once I get this all apart, I'll be back. Okay, this bearing doesn't look bad at all. It could use some grease, but there's no rust on the bearings. A lot of times you'll pop these sails off, and this just comes off using a pick, small screwdriver, and you'll get it off. You just want to be careful you don't damage the sail. Now, this over here, I'm going to pop this out anyway. It's going to be maybe another hour's worth of work to do the both of them this way. And the way you get these out, I don't have a tall tripod in here to set this camera up. Well, that nut that disappeared, you put that nut back on top and you tap it out. This spindle with the blade will come off. And to get the bearings out, if you're going to be using them again, you want to be careful. You have to get a drift, and from the top you'll push the bottom one out, then flip the deck over, and from the other side you'll get this one out. You want to be careful when you're hitting it. You don't want to hit this middle one. You want to get it on the outer rim. And you're using this, if you're using the same bearings like I'm going to be using, you want to, if I had new bearings, I would put them in. They're not that expensive. But when you're taking this out, you want to do it side to side, side to side. And when you put them back in, you put them down, get a block of wood. You could get a big socket if you like, but I usually just use a block of wood I put on top and I tap it down. I cleaned this out. I'm mentioning all this now because I'm not going to be showing how to do it. Again, because of the tripod situation, and I have to get this done. I've been sitting on this for a couple of days because of the rain, and I have to get it out of here. So I'm going to get this out, sharpen the blades, put it together, check that tractor, see what was making the smoke, and that'll be it. I don't recall doing the video unpacking the bearing and opening it up. So while I was doing this, I'm working on the bench right now, and I have this little tripod to keep it steady. If ever you have to replace the bearings, they have a number right in here. They all have a number, whether they're metal or whether they're rubber like this. I don't know if you're catching it, but this particular one is 6204 RS, and you can see it's sealed on both sides. Now, I cleaned it off. This is the bottom bearing. I showed you the top one. Get this out. I want to carefully pull the seal off. If you have a thin, small screwdriver, probably be better than the pick. I'm going to be running out of battery time on this camera soon. Oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Let me get a screwdriver. The top one came off a little easier. Let's see what we got here now. Just get that screwdriver in there, pry it open. See it coming up now. Okay, let's see what we look like inside. Again, this one doesn't look all that bad either. No rust. As you can see, very, very little grease. Now when these go bad, you'll see all kinds of rust in here, and a lot of times they won't even move. So this isn't bad. I'm going to clean it up a little bit, and then I'm going to pack it with grease. I'll be back in a minute. You can spray this out with a carb cleaner. You can use motor oil, gas. But if you're spraying anything in there, you want to make sure you get it out, otherwise it's going to break down that grease. And I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be a regular maintenance job for anyone. Taking off the deck, taking off the spindles. To tell you the truth, I'm surprised that this is as clean as it is in here. Come on. Yep, it's still on. This is the grease that I'm using. It just happens to be one of the containers I have on hand. And the way I'm doing this, I won't be able to touch the camera for a while, so if I get out of focus, that'll be it. Doing a little old school, the way we used to do the bearings, wheel bearings on the cars. Just get it, get some grease in your hand, get it, and just pack it in all the way around. Just keep pushing it in so you see it coming out the other side. Okay, keep pushing, pushing. Get a little bit more in there. And just get the idea. You just palming it in. And you can see I didn't do that good of a job cleaning out. There's some of the old stuff. Oh, there goes the camera. Oh, no. Yeah, I just bought this camera a little while back. Try to keep it in some kind of shape. You can see it's coming through. I gotta pack more in there. When you press in here, press on one side, you see it come on the other. Now, let's get serious. Okay, so you have the idea. Get the grease in your hand. Not the job to do if you don't want to get dirty. Helps with the calluses on your hand, though. Do enough of these, your hands will be soft. And that old grease shouldn't be in there. Okay, came through. It's packed in on both sides. I'm just taking the extra grease off here, and I'm not reaching around the camera with my hands full of this grease. The important thing is not the grease that's on the top, it's the grease that's packed in between the bearings. Okay, so now put these caps back on. There goes my work table. I want to make sure you snap them in there good, and when you put the caps in, that packs that grease in a little tighter too. Don't worry about putting too much. Like I said, you want to get it in there, you want to get it packed and tight, because chances are you're not going to be doing this job again. But if you did have the time, maybe the winter months, you're idle, you have room in your garage to work, this isn't a bad thing to do on all the bearings on your machinery. Sorry about not showing this on screen. I'm just trying to get this grease off my hands so I can handle this camera again. Alright, here. Now this extra grease, I'm just leaving it on, because when I go to slide this back into the housing, this will just make it a little easier to slide in. And I thought this would be useful for if you never did this before and you were wondering how it's done. That's it. This is packed. This bearing should last probably as long as that deck. That deck is it's been painted before. But if you do this, these bearings won't go unless they're under a lot of heavy use. I'm going to get the top bearing out, do the same to the top, and then I'm going to show you how to put these back in. Alright, I'm back. I cleaned all the bearings, and it took me a while because unlike the first one, I actually washed these out with some gas, spun them around, and packed them up. Now it's time to put them back in. I have the deck upside down. This is the bottom side of the deck facing the grass. Well, that's kind of obvious. And Johnny, my cameraman, is going to keep everything in view for us. Okay, John, you got that?
Yeah.
You're keeping it right over here. You want to make sure you clean this out well. Get the bearing. Like I said before, I left the extra grease on. It's not going to hurt anything. You don't want to hit the bearing in the middle. You want to hit it on the edges. What did I do with the hammer? And I misplaced my hammer, so let's see. You don't need a hammer this big. And you just tap it. Try to get it as even as possible. You don't want to go in cockeyed because then you won't be able to get it out. There we go. Now this has to sit in a little bit more. You could use a piece of pipe, a large socket, because all you have to do is tap it. In this case, I'm just going to hit the edges a little bit. When I put that shaft in and it draws it, it'll pull it all together. Like I said, you don't want to go hitting it in the middle because you'll destroy the race that's in there. Now, get the shaft, put it in. Okay, stand back a little bit, John. Just keep the camera facing that way. It's okay if you don't get everything right now. This is nothing to see on this. I'm just turning it over. Get back so if this falls, it doesn't hit you. I'm getting the, you see this, John?
Yeah.
I'm getting the, you holding it close? Come close. I'm getting this block of wood underneath. Get a little crowd. Now this particular deck, you hold it there? This particular deck, you have these two spaces that go inside. Don't forget to put them in there. It's 1, 2. Now we get the other bearing. Now this is going to get a little tricky. There we go. Now it's not, this isn't set, okay, this isn't set all the way down. Still on there? Now we focusing, you focused?
Yeah.
Gonna get the pulley. Gonna have to tap this up a little bit. Back up just a little bit, John. Oh, there we go. Then I have to tap it for it to come out now. See that small hammer where it went?
No.
Okay. And it, because you see my thumb? Make sure the nut's on here when you hit this. You don't want to strip those threads. This bearing is set. Now for the top bearing. Back up a little bit. There you go, buddy. This pulley has the, you see it? Don't move, I'm moving to you. This pulley has these notches. Come up close to this here, John. And if you can see over here, on the shaft it has it also. You just get it into where it sits. This brake goes back on. It has this little clip. It's got to go in the hole so it doesn't spin. Okay, that's about it. Now I'm going to put the blade on. I'm going to do the other side. It's the same procedure as what I'm doing over here. And once I have it on, we'll listen to it spinning and see if it's making any grinding noise, which it shouldn't. One bearing did have a rough spot on it though. No rust, but it had a rough spot. So that bearing at some point is going to go, but for now, it's all I have to use. Okay, hit the top. Showing on here?
Yeah.
Could you see it close?
Yeah.
Okay, come close without it so you can hear. Okay. No grinding, no noise at all. That's okay. Come over here, John. Get it close so you can hear if there's any noise. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. No, now don't put your finger there. This one has a little bit of noise I hear. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but all this background noise I have. Not much, just slight. But I told you one bearing had a spot on it. You hear it? You can hear it now. Now that's the best I could be done with it for this point. This one, no noise at all. This one here. This one here, slight noise. So to recap, if you don't have to sharpen the blade, you can leave the blade on. Come to the top side, remove this nut, the brake comes off, the pulley comes off. The shaft on this, I said you had to put a nut on it and hit it down. These just fell out. I didn't have to hit it down. And if you're going to use the same bearings over, you have to be careful knocking them out. If you're putting brand new bearings in, very easy. Just hit it with a punch and you'll get it out. Putting it back together, when you put the bearings in, you could use it with the stick. As a matter of fact, when I put the other one back in, I used the corner of the stick and it went right in. Pop the bearing in on the bottom, put the shaft in from the bottom, put the two spacers on, put the top bearing in, tap it down, put it together, tighten it up, and you're good to go. If you're not repacking these and you're not running into any trouble with anything being stripped, this whole job should take about a half hour with a cup of coffee. With me, it took a while longer because I used the same bearings. I had to clean them out. I don't recommend doing it this way, but I did it outside. I used a little container with gas in it, spun the bearing around, used a nylon brush, cleaned it out, dried them up real good, did something else, came back about an hour later, repacked them, and you saw the rest. And that's it, guys. If you have any questions or comments, post them down below. Give it a like if you would. Pass it along to someone else that might be able to use this video. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. Until next time, stay safe.